Hello, how are you guys doing today? Um, Hopefully this was a lot easier this time now that I have learned a little bit about how to do this. So today I have something that I think is really going to be beneficial to a lot of traders that I have come in contact with over the years. Many people keep telling me that they really want to learn to trade, and a lot of people have applied themselves and learned a lot and have developed a skill. They know how to read charts, and especially a lot of people who have been a part of our trading community and learned what really works in trading, learn how to actually identify the ends of trends and the ends of corrections, and to be able to do this on all time frames, be able to read the charts and identify why you would want to enter on which pair and why you'd want to exit and on what time frame, and all of these things that do require developing skill. So anyway, a lot of people are working hard to develop that skill, and yet they just don't have the time to be in front of their computers. Is that the case with anyone who may be here today? Because if you really are extremely interested in making trading your business, but in the meantime you have another job and you have other responsibilities, you have family responsibilities, you have other things that you have to do, and for some people sleeping is one of those things that you have to do, and many people who live in the US find it very challenging because of the fact that we found that 70% of all trade entries do occur in the London session, or the beginning of the European session, the first 2 or 3 hours of the London session. That's when most of the trades are happening. So plus a lot of people work long hours, and people keep telling me I work 60 hours per week or 65 hours per week, plus have a commute, sometimes an hour each way through traffic just to get to work. And by the time you get home, you're exhausted, and it's just very limited what you can accomplish in trading, because it does require you to be focusing on charts, you to understand how to read charts. So I really empathize with people who have this problem, and I really would like to help more people to be able to overcome that, because if that's your challenge and you can't just suddenly quit all your jobs. People have more than one jobs, or maybe they have one job that takes up a lot of time, and you're trying to learn how to trade in the meantime, and that's very commendable, and I really admire people who are doing that. It's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of work to learn how to trade, but to learn how to trade and maintain another job, another business, and take care of your family and all the other responsibilities you may have. Maintaining physical fitness and relaxation, that takes some time every day. And don't you deserve some time to give to yourself, just to relax and to do something to help you to stay fit, to stay positive? And isn't doing personal development just a basic requirement that everyone has? I believe everyone should have time and the ability to work on personal development of some kind. Maybe you do some meditation, maybe you practice some subconscious programming methods, as we cover a lot in regards to how you can use that to help you to trade, for one thing, but how can you use those things for all other things in life? Anyway, so what we're going to show today is how can you set up entry orders in advance. So I always want to emphasize that this is not a way to figure out how you can just grab some pips out of the market by accident without actually knowing how to read the charts. And you still have to have the full capability of all the skills for reading charts and doing trading. It's just that you're not going to be there at your computer. So it still requires that you do put in some time. And I know a lot of people have already put in a lot of time to learn these things, but they just aren't going to be at their computer when these trades are happening every day. Okay, so another thing is that we have discovered that the market makes its moves and forms entries only at certain times per day every day. I don't know if this sliding is better like this. Still, it's not. So we need a different an additional fill light thing. So you still have to put in the time, and with regard to that time, we have found that the market forms entries only at certain times per day, and it's just like clockwork. Once you get used to it, in the beginning, don't a lot of traders think that the market can just suddenly take off at any time, and it really doesn't do that. It's pretty predictable, and there is a set pattern for the times of a day. If there's going to be an entry, it will happen at certain times of day. Well, that's one way to overcome the challenge. It's just by knowing the times of day when the market moves. Because now that I know what time the market moves, I just make sure that I'm there every day at those times. And that's what I have always encouraged everyone else to do. If you want to get in a trade, here's when it's going to be. You could make an appointment. You can literally make appointments for all the trades this coming week. And there may be some flexibility, like something could happen that you don't know what the trigger is going to be. But the percentage of trades, it's always going to be the majority of trades, just like clockwork, are going to happen at certain times of day. Well, even if you know those times of day, that doesn't mean that you can be there, right? So we got to be reasonable and understand that some people are still not going to be able to be there because they got other things they have to do. Well, I've always kind of been a manual trading advocate, that I believe that you gotta see the trade happening in order to get in. But that's not necessarily true, especially the more you are able to read the charts. You know to a certain extent what's going to happen. Let me show you some examples of that. Let's say, for instance, you've been trading the euro versus the dollar, and so the skills that you would need to have is to be able to read the charts on all time frames. And it is amazing how most traders have been conditioned in their minds to open their charts and just go to a certain time frame and just focus there. Just focus there. Like you don't need to see what the market is actually doing. So if you read the charts on all time frames, then you're going to know how you would trade. So what skill would you need to know in order to know how to trade? And specifically, how would we set up entry orders in advance? Well, this piece of the market is actually unusual in that this is a very long and very strong wave, which is a long and strong trend on shorter time frames. But think about it for a moment. If you can identify the beginning of a trend and the end of a trend, and again, for some reason, the majority of traders in the world do not know that that's possible. And that's why I am always excited to help more people to discover that not only is that possible, it's actually quite doable by any ordinary person. Just like you'll see in all the previous interviews with people who are just ordinary people, but they were able to, after some time and practice, to be able to actually see for themselves on a chart the beginning of a trend and the end of a trend. So like this wave right here, if we haven't had the end of the trend, then how we would trade would be, if we go to a shorter time frame, we would look for the next entry to go short. And certainly in hindsight, you could see that that would be pretty simple. If we go down into the range of the 4-hour or 2-hour time frame, every time there is a correction and then it breaks the correction and continues, and that would be a new short entry. Let's say you came to your charts on any one of these days back here, you could see that there was a downtrend, and you could determine that the downtrend was not over because there is a specific way of determining that. And part of the reason why even some seemingly intelligent people believe that you can't do that is because they haven't been trained to see it, and they aren't aware of the additional steps that you would need to do to be able to see this stuff. Like one of them is just reading the charts on all time frames. If you're not reading it on all time frames, it would not be possible, right? It would not be possible for you to do that stuff. So in order to do any of this stuff, you have to just read it on all time frames. And again, I demonstrate all the time how you can do that within a matter of seconds. It doesn't take a long time. Just to try to encourage you that there's not a problem with you would have to spend a lot of time analyzing the charts because again, people are conditioned that the way to trade is to just go right to the short time frame, look for an entry to get in. You know, that's how they're conditioned. And then because of that, they can't see any of this stuff. They don't know any of the stuff that I'm describing. They've been conditioned by the brokers or by the mentors that here's how you do it. Open up your charts, you go to a short time frame, and when this crosses this, you just get in. And then people do that, and then sometimes it works, and then they can never see. They don't know. So when people say, well, the market is just completely random, there's no way you can tell what the market is going to do. Well, that's one of the reasons why that's true for them. Yeah, it's true. You can't see what the market is doing because you're not looking and you don't know what to look at. So people who do know what to look at, it's a different story. And there is an art and a science that you develop. There is a skill. There is a series of steps that is not just opening up a chart and going to one time frame and get in. It's reading the whole picture, everything that you see. And that's why so many people, they've all been conditioned that here's a trading strategy. You open your charts, and when this happens, you get in. But what about reading the whole picture and then analyzing things looking at all time frames, comparing correlated pairs, searching for clarity. All these additional steps enable a person to be able to see and know if there's a beginning of a trend or if there's an end of a trend. So anyway, back here, there was an end of a correction, and we could identify that that was the beginning of a trend. A few people, I mean, it's not really that difficult, but for any of these places like this, some people would not know, but some people could know that the market was turning at specific points. And still, in the trading world, most people that I encounter, first of all, just have a disbelief that, nah, that's not even possible. And then if they explore it further, they may come to realize that it is possible. But what's really inspiring is when people discover that it's possible because they see and are able to do it. So the best way to discover that these things are true is for you to develop the skill and be able to do it. Then you can open your charts and you can know if there's a trend or if there's a correction, if there's an end of a trend or if there's an end of a correction. So during this period of time, just as an example, if you happen to be looking at the euro versus the dollar, and this is an unusual, somewhat, it's not completely unusual. It does happen every several months to a year or so. There may be a wave that looks like this on any of the charts. But this is exceptionally long, especially when you're looking at the 1 or 2 hour. And so the type of entries that are happening during this time are actually a lot easier, aren't they? I mean, that's what I always remember from back in 2008 when everyone was saying this is the worst crash, global economic crisis. And I was thinking, well, I don't want there to be global economic crisis that harms people or causes people to have bad fortune of some kind. But when it comes to trading, that was some of the easiest trading that we've ever had. And that's why when all this fear is in the news, just realize that it may be some of the easiest times to ever trade. And again, I don't want there to be bad global economic crisis, but I do want people to know that if you are a compassionate person and you want to help people, well, if you use your skill to trade during these times, it is the easiest time ever to trade. So just trade and take the money and help people if you want to do that. But during these times when there is crisis, it's the easiest ever to trade. So during this wave, all you have to do is just, identify the end of each of these corrections, which happens to be mostly flat. And really, you could just open your chart and go short. And that's what happened during all that time in the past when there was a global economic crisis was at its peak. You could just open your chart and go short. You don't even have to have a strategy. Anybody who went short for any reason was making money. And I could be, dwelling on all the advanced details of how you need to see all these things, but if somebody just opened their charts and went short, they made money. And that's what you could be doing during this time period. But let's look at something that might be a little bit more realistic during normal time periods. Like it would obviously, if you open your chart during this period of time and you could tell that the trend was not over on the 12-hour to the daily, which so far we've been able to tell that the trend was not over on the 12-hour to the daily. There may have been a time or two when I was thinking it's going to turn, but it never did turn. And we could see that there hasn't been an end of the trend, then that would tell you that you can still continue to go short on the next shorter time frame, which would be really the 2 hour is the best time frame. The 1 to 2, I think the 1 hour is going to show too much detail for you to see the entries clearly. But the 1 to 2 hour is the range where you would be setting up your entry orders. So what kind of an entry order would you set up? And let's use something that would be a more normal type of thing. In fact, I think we would need to go further back into the past. What's a good example of something? So just hold on a minute. Since we're live, I'm going to allow some charts to populate here. There we go. Here's the Euro Aussie on the 1 hour. And let's just say that during this period of time right here, we know that there was a downtrend. And it was during this period of time right here, we could see that there was a correction. So if we knew that there was a downtrend that was still intact, this still isn't the best example, because there are one of the things that I emphasize helps people to increase their probability and to increase the number of winning trades is to deliberately search for clarity, and that's what I do every day. When I'm looking for trades, I'm searching for clarity. And if I were trading this correction here, it's not a good example of clarity for a correction. So if we looked at these points, yeah, these points back here, I think these would be a lot better example. So right here we had an ABC correction, and I realize some people, if you even say something like ABC, they just don't say anything like that, because I don't want to actually know what markets do. And there. I don't want to know what the market is doing on every chart. I don't want to know what markets never stop doing. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me what markets never stop doing, because, I don't want to know that. I just want to throw an indicator on a chart instead. So anyway, if you do want to know what markets do, you would see that this is a classic shape of a trend, and that this is a classic shape of a correction. And if you know the stuff that we know, which is what markets do, then you would be able to identify that entry right at the point with high probability, and be able to do that over and over. How would you do that? I could just tell you it may require additional practice and skill development. That is the kind of thing that we work on every day in our live session, and it wouldn't be possible if someone just told you, here's how you do it, now go do it. But if you actually learned how to do it and then saw many examples and had guidance pointing things out, like I'm pointing this out right now, if you can see right here, and if you aren't familiar with what charts are doing and what is a classic shape of a trend, I mean, I do realize that there are people who are looking right at charts every day of their life for 30 or 40 years and maybe considering themselves to be trading professionals, but they don't know what a classic shape of a trend is. So if someone shows you what a classic shape of a trend is, and then shows you over and over and over and over, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, here comes another one, do you see that? And over and over every single day of your life, and now weeks and months, and you're getting all these different examples. It's different every time. Yes, it's organic. It's not exactly the same every time. So hopefully that's not going to be a problem for you, because you can use your skill and your creativity and your observation, visual skills and analysis to see things, and then soon you can read the market just as if you were learning to read the English language. And when you go to first grade in school, people present these letters, and they say, here's the letter B, and then if it's a lowercase, someone say, here's the letter D, and you make what's the difference? They look the same to me. Well, you did learn to distinguish the difference in first grade, and you can learn to distinguish these different shapes on charts in the first grade of learning to trade. So by the time you get to like the second grade of learning to trade, you already know, and then you're working on more refinements of things. So this is the classic shape of a trend. This is a classic shape of a correction. This is a very good example of something that we would know that this point right here, right smack on that point, right there, and that's what we do every day, right there at that point would be an entry. A lot of people would have asked me, can you really do that? Well, I think the only real answer to that is, let me show you, because the question is, can you not do that? Because once you see it, I think that you can, and I can help you to be able to do it. But if you don't know the critical steps to identify certain trades and how to find them, to locate them, and how to know what time frame they're going to show up on, because they don't just show up on a random time frame. And just because you chose to trade on a certain time frame doesn't mean that they will show up on that time frame. And that's one of the big things that makes a huge difference. So there are many things that traders have been conditioned to do that causes them to not be able to see this stuff. So when this was forming, there was a day where this was already forming, and every person in our trading group would be able to see, okay, now this pair, the Euro Aussie, on this time frame has a classic shape of a trend. It has a classic shape of a correction. When these specific conditions begin to form, it will form an end of a correction, just very similar to the fact that the sun will come up in the east tomorrow morning. And if someone told you the sun will come up in the east, and some people said, you don't know that. Well, maybe it might come up in some other direction, but let's just say with charts, we don't always know every single thing, but we do have a high probability that we do know that when we see this, there's a certain criteria that's going to tell us that there's going to be an entry. You guys who are familiar with this, you already know how to do it yourself if you're in our group. So if it was that day and there's a specific time when this is going to be likely to happen, then you had to go to work. There is a correction forming there. We have people in our group who have been doing this now for years, and in some cases they would place I think it's called a buy limit. I get these things confused myself because I have not been using these things myself, but because I'm going to be there when the entries happen and I want to see it and I get in, I'm just accustomed to doing that myself. But if you had to go to work, you could place a buy limit at a certain price. And then using your own knowledge and skill, you would know approximately where to put that buy limit. And then when you came back, you would be in this trade. And then once it starts going, you would know that it's not finished during all of this time right here. All of this trend right here, every person who can read the market would know that it's not finished. That's another thing a lot of people don't realize, right? They don't know when to get out. And they just get out, you know, boom. Target one hit. It's just like a stab in the dark, because people just, they are just like groping in the dark, like, oh, get out there, because they can't tell. They don't know if it's going to keep going or not. So if you were going to read charts and that was going to be your business, your profession, don't you think that people would want to know how to tell if something is going to keep going or correct and continue or reverse? Most people think that that's just random and there's no way to tell. And that, I like that, because it makes it seem like I have an extraordinary skill. I guess I do, compared to people who can't see it. But to me, I don't think that it's that extraordinary that there's nobody in the world who can see this. Yeah, there are people who can see it, because we've discovered there are people in our group. They can see it. I can see it. We're doing it, and it works. So you would be able to get in this trade while you are at work or sleeping, which is another thing that a lot of people like to do every day. And I agree. You know, sleeping is a natural biological thing that if you're not able to sleep, and in the US, I really admire people that we have people who are there every day, 3:30 a.m. local time, trading all next 2 or 3 hours, then taking a short nap and then getting back up for the 8:30 New York session time, whatever time that is in whichever part of the US or whatever time zone you happen to be in. Especially in the US, it's extremely challenging. And in other areas too, still, it may not be at 3 o'clock in the morning when the London session is, but when you live in, even in the UK, it's time for the London session. People are at work. They've gone to work because, you know, it's time to work. So unless you already happen to be financially independent, then why would you be even motivated to learn to trade? And if you have to work, then doesn't it make sense that most of the people who are trying to learn how to trade would need to be at work? So if you have to be at work right when the London session is starting, before you go to work, don't you think you could take 15 to 30 minutes to go through a process of analysis, be able to identify these points, be able to identify these patterns and be able to read them and set up for the next trade? So right here, there's another entry, and on a slightly shorter time frame, there is another classic entry. And all through here and all through everything, there are fabulous, fantastic opportunities to set up entry orders to get into the next trade if you can see them, and you still would need to be able to see them and to understand. So for the people who really intend to have a legitimate skill in trading, using the entry order as a tool, it's not a trading method in itself. Just like most of the other things that I talk about, like Fibonacci, so anything like that. Many people think, oh, that's a trading method. It's not. Using entry orders is not a trading method. It's a tool to help you get into the trade if you can see what a trade is. If you can see and understand what a trade is, you can use entry orders to assist you to get into the trade. And then later you can come back, look at the charts, and you could even use orders to help you to take profit orders to help you to get out of a trade. But that's another subject. I mean, if you just have a take profit, that's exactly what I recommend not doing, because like for this trade right here, the typical world's greatest trading mentor would have just slapped a take profit at some random place and say, well, this is 127%, blah, blah, blah. They don't know where it's going to go, and they just put a take profit there and get out. But much better if you can tell what the market is doing. So this is just to give you a little bit of insight into how you could use entry orders in your own trading business. But if you really want to develop a skill to be able to do this, I would recommend that you do first have some time to practice and to develop your skill and to study, watch the market. You're still going to have to watch markets, even if you can't always spend a lot of time every day. That means you need to spend extra time going back each day and examining what happens. And this is one of the things that I have noticed accelerates the learning process. Is when you are looking at a pattern and you're involved in it and you have an expectation of what should happen next, and then you're waiting to see what happens next, like when you're watching your favorite TV show and they say, in the next episode, watch how blah, blah, blah happens. That's how we have to be extremely curious about what's going to happen for each next move that the market makes. So you come back the next day and you see, oh, so that's what happened. Because what most people do is they just come back the next day. They don't even remember. They're not even paying any attention. It's just another, there's a chart. They're not involved in finding out what happens in the pattern, because most people aren't even looking at that anyway. So I guess that's why they wouldn't be curious as to how it works out. So you would still need to be able to do that. And I hope this gives you some ideas, right? Because if the wheels are starting to turn and the light bulbs are going off in your head, you might be thinking there may be a way that you can really make the trading business work, even though you are limited with the amount of time that you can put into the charts. And in the past, I just told people, don't even bother if you can't put in 2 or 3 hours during the London session, another 2 hours during the New York session, because that's when the market moves. If you want to get in a trade, be there at those times. Well, many people can't do that, and that's one reason that we do record our daily sessions. And although we are not able to just slap them up in the immediate second that we end the session, they do get put up each day, and it's not right on time. So if you do want to watch what happened in the past each day and look at the charts for that period of time that you have, maybe you have a period of time to look at charts, but it's not during the time when we're in our live sessions. You can just combine that with looking at some of the previous recordings and then see what's happening at that time, and then you look at the charts again. You would be able to satisfy that curiosity. Oh, here's what he said was going to happen, and let's see if that happened. then you can see, well, it didn't happen like what he said or something like that. Even if you have any curiosity, it's going to accelerate your learning process. It's going to accelerate your skill development. So if that gives you some good ideas about how you can use entry orders to assist you as a tool in your trading business, then I hope that this will serve you well going into the future. You can see the options are opening to you. Doors are opening because now you can see, if you can just learn to read the market, you can still every day have a limited amount of time where you're still focused, looking at the charts, and set up your entries. Go off to work or whatever, go to bed, come back the next day, and then you'll see, okay, I'm in a trade. Or you come back and see, oh, I already got profit on that trade because I already set up to take profit, come back, that trade was good, set up for the next trade for the next day. So anyway, you guys have any questions, just leave a comment here and I'll get back to you on that. And these live feed questions, sometimes I come back and those things are gone. So because I'm not looking at it right now, I don't know if anybody had any questions or not, but if you do have any questions, you can put it also on the video after the live is over, and those seem to be more permanent, so we'll see. But anyway, I'll get back to you on all your questions, and can demonstrate how to do this every day. And also you can see some of our members who have been using this as their primary tool demonstrate it to you as well. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and getting ready to get started with the next New York session. Our live session is going to be starting in about 45 minutes. And if you're not a member of our trading group and a member who has access to all of our training and all of our live training, you can always go to tradingmastermind.com, and we have a free training course to get people started, and then you can find out if that's right for you. And we do have recently have had a trial period for people who just want to see what would it be like. And in the past I never did that, and the reason was because when people see what it's really like, their first impression is that it's just boring and tedious. And that's kind of how the trading business works, because if you look at a chart, you're going to see, you should enter here, you should enter here. What are you going to do between here and here? Just look at a chart. Like, take this chart here. If I go, and if I find, here's an entry right here, and then here's an exit right here. Here's another entry here. What would I be doing during all of these days and hours in between there? Nothing. And after you enter a trade, you're going to be doing nothing. If you want to make the most money, that's when you're going to have what I call a effortless flow of profit. Once you get in a trade, you don't do anything. That goes against what people have been programmed also. I can just sit here and do nothing, and I'm going to get more profit? Well, of course. So you do have to get used to that. But anyway, you guys have a good one, and I'll talk to you later. I'm going to sign off so I can get on to the next session.